Mr. Priest, Leader.
Any other apologies, colleagues? Okay, thanks, folks. And number 2, to receive any declarations of interest under the members' code of conduct. There's none. Oh, sorry, Kieran.
Thanks, Leader. Just a non-pecuniary interest on agenda item number 10 with reference to West Midlands Combined Authority that I do work for them. Thanks, Leader.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And thirdly, to confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of August 2024. That agreed? Thank you. And then number 4 is the 24-25 Revenue and Capital Monitoring Report on pages 9 to 34. Call on Councillor Steve Clark. Steve.
Thank you, Leader. This report sets out early forecast spending for the current financial year. We'll bring updated forecasts to future meetings of the Cabinet. Spending controls will continue to drive savings in staff costs. We are keeping down the cost of borrowing, and take-up of the green waste service has been better than expected. But like other councils across the country, we will continue to see rising costs of social care and pressures from loss of income in some areas. Our financial outlook is better than it was a few months ago, but it remains challenging. We will carry on the task of finding more savings to put the council back on a sound financial footing, and we will bring back proposals to Cabinet during the budget cycle. I move the report's recommendations, and in doing so ask the Cabinet to consider the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any comments, observations? Showkat?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Whilst in the report I note a slight favourable variance of just over £1 million against the budget, I think it's important to say that the future sustainability and the future of this council, we're still not out of deep water. The council reserves continue to be depleted, and we're still reliant very much on the very small amount we've got in there. And there is little flexibility, as it says in the report, to meet any unexpected pressures. And that is always a risk, because you never know what's around the corner. Does the Cabinet member for Finance agree that the council is in this financial mess, firstly because of the £120 million that has been cut from Dudley's funding over the last so many years by the former government, and what resources were kind of available locally? He lost grip and control, and that's we're in the mess we're in at the moment. Can you also confirm that the £3.3 million budget contingency that has been released, back to social care, because that's where it originally came from? Obviously it needs to go back into that, into social care to look after our vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you, Showkat. I do agree that there's been a lot of underfunding from the government over the last years in terms of the council finances. So we are hoping for great things now from the new government that are in place, and so hopefully they will be funding the councils in a better way than the last government did. And in terms of the contingency fund, that's actually been put back onto the bottom line rather than put into adult social care. It's been put back onto the bottom line.
Yeah, can you just clarify what you mean by bottom line? Because if I recollect, that 3.3 million was at the, was allocated for social services, and because the external auditors at the time said, well, you need to create a contingency, so it was put in there. So what I would expect, if it's released, it should go back into social care, because that's where some of the pressure is, because it shouldn't then be used to alleviate pressures elsewhere.
The pressures are adult social care, so it has gone back into the general fund. So it's no longer a contingency, but it's gone back into the general fund. But the issues that we're going to have is with adult social care. So even though it's ring fenced, it's going to go to the same place.
nutshell, it is offsetting the overspend in adult social care. I've got Jackie, Kieran, and then Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Could I just ask the lead member for housing in relation to Appendix D, first of all? It references charges coming in from the 1st of November or tenants. I just wondered how we were going to do that in that timescale when the consultation hasn't actually yet commenced. And also with respect to Appendix G, it suggests a permanent reduction in acquisitions and particularly new dwellings. I just wondered if there was any more information on that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, can I ask Kathy to come in on that?
Kathy, could you come in on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the service charges, since the report has been drafted, we've had some further information through from Anthony Collins solicitors who've been supporting us in terms of drafting the documents and ensuring that we adhere to the correct processes and have the notices of variation and everything correct. So you're absolutely right, Councillor Cowell, they won't come in at the beginning of November, and we are just reviewing the timelines now, and we'll update very shortly. But you're right, there will be a consultation period of 4 weeks. So they won't come in as planned, and we'll amend the document and the forecasts for both income and expenditure now that we've got that data and can agree a firm date for that to start. It's worth flagging that any income that's not collected that we had anticipated collecting through service charges is offset by the expenditure that would have been associated with it. So again, we'll update that. And in terms of the second part of your query, I was just trying to find that in the document. Could you let me know what page that is, please?
Sorry, Appendix G, page 34.
Let me have a look.
It's in the footnotes, actually. It's note 1.
Okay. So permanent reduction in acquisitions and new dwellings. So that particular line of our capital programme relates to our HRA activity. I will clarify why it says permanent reduction. Now, clearly, when we are acquiring, we are doing that to replace stock that we've disposed of or has been sold through the right to buy. So I will check why that says permanent. If you could leave that with me, I'll come back to you shortly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
I've got Kieran and then Sean.
Thanks, Leader. Just a point, and I think it's a pertinent agenda item to raise it on, given that it relates to the financial position of this council, and given that I attended the Environment Regen Scrutiny Committee on Monday night. I mean, it's quite amazing on Monday night to hear actually that every single leisure facility that we've got in this borough makes a loss, and that it may be the case that we look to outsource facilities. And yet, what I'd like to know from either yourself or the Cabinet Member for Finance is, how is it possible that the leisure centres are in this position, and yet we see a report recently that the council essentially gave back £176,000 worth of funding that could have been invested in Hale's own leisure centre to make the pool more environmentally sustainable and various other upgrades. Now, I know there was a position that said the potential loss while the works were being done was the issue, which doesn't really wash with me, given the amount of funding that we could have secured, the improvements it could have made, and in particular to tonight's agenda as well, where we look at our environmental policy that could have helped with some of that and the subsidies that the council give to it. So clearly it's a missed opportunity, and I just would like to get some rationale from someone as to why this made financial sense when we could have had £176,000 worth of funding where we could have invested in the leisure centres, and we decided to just give it back. Thanks, Leader.
Yeah, okay. No, to be honest with you, that's a very good question. It was very, very unfortunate. I remember going to visit Hale Zone at the time, just before we put the tender in to submit to get the money back in October 23 from the Swimming Pool Grant Fund. Successfully approved in March 24. We were all ecstatic, thinking we went straight to work, directly straight. The CLS went into the work to get things started for the triple glazing and the pumps. After going through corporate landlord, commercialism, the environmental as well, and leisure, all officers agreed that it wasn't viable. With the closure of 4 weeks with a £45,000 loss was not not ideal at all. The only savings we would make would be from the energy while it was, while the works were going ahead, with a net loss of £37,000. And it was decided on balance with the financial climate that we're in and with everything that's going on, the savings of just over £2,500 a year over 14 years, and 14 years was the least amount of time that we'd have got the money back. It was, we felt, well, it was felt prudent, officers felt prudent from all the departments that it wouldn't be very good to go forward with it at this stage. We can, in the future, go for it again if it was on the cards. I will bring Helen in just to see if there's anything I haven't put forward.
Right, thank you. Through you, the only thing I would add to what Councillor Bradley has said is we did go back to the government department and ask if we could change our bid to do different work that would have allowed us to create efficiencies but not have a period whereby the pool was shut. But that request was turned down. So we didn't just refuse the money. We did try to amend what we were doing so that it didn't have that negative impact, but unfortunately we were unable to do so. So as Councillor Bradley said, in this instance, it didn't represent value for money. But if future opportunities arise that we can accommodate without unacceptable downtime, then we will obviously review that again. Thank you.
I think that's an important lesson for the council to learn, that sometimes there are grants available, but we have to start looking at whether those grants are value for money, and are they going to end up costing us more money and doing more harm than good. And I think that's a very sobering thought, and one that we should really pay attention to going forward. I've got Sean. Anybody else after Sean? No. Okay, Sean.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Casey's asked my exact question. Could I just ask the Deputy Leader, could members of the Shadow Cabinet, myself, members of the Lib Dems, have a detailed breakdown of the grant issue and what we would have lost, how we would have lost it and why we would have lost it, and also why we went for it in the first place if it was going to lose money? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely, no problems. I don't think that we go into these ventures on working on that we're going to lose it. So I will defend that one. That's taken away, I'm guessing, Helen.
So happy to provide a note and come back on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Recommendations there are on page 9. No, then, yes, they are. Recommendations are there on page 9. Is that report accepted? Okay, thank you. And I will say, while Catherine and Sir Tim are online, looking at these figures, the HRA account now is probably in the best position it's been in 10 years. And considering where we were last October, congratulations to the team from myself and the rest of the senior members here on both sides. Okay, moving on then, we got agenda item 5, which is the council tax reduction scheme. And again, I call on Councillor Steve Clark.
Thank you, Leader. The Revenue and Benefits Service are seeking approval to consult to find ways to help support people in need with their council tax bills. Council tax reduction helps people on low incomes pay their council tax. This is separate to the support offered to pension age households and other discounts, such as single persons allowance. There is no change proposed to the maximum council tax reduction allowed. This remains at 77%, leaving working age residents a minimum of 23% to pay. The idea of this report is to make the scheme easier to understand and access, to continue support for households on the lowest incomes, and make the scheme work better with the universal credit system. I move the report. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any comments, questions? Jackie? No. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Just a quick one. In relation to page 41, paragraphs 44 to 46, around the extended payments provision removal, it says that it won't actually affect any applicants because of the migration to universal credit. But the trouble is we keep finding this reference to everybody's going to migrate to universal credit sort of this year or whatever, but that's not entirely true. There are some applicants who are being delayed. So Has anybody looked into that? Will it affect any applicants? Is there any sort of wider work going on around that?
I have. Wendy, can you come in and answer that one, please?
Yeah, from the testing that we've conducted within the modelling, no one was affected within it. It's something that's been phased out with the extended payment over years, over the last few years. If you want exact figures from the modelling tool that we used, there was no one affected at that time. That's as much really of an answer that I can give you that's a definite.
Okay.
Thank you, Wendy.
All right, thank you.
Okay. No other questions on this then? Then the recommendations are on page 35. Is that report accepted? Okay, thank you, colleagues. Moving on to agenda item 6, the financial wellbeing and mitigating poverty strategy 24 to 2034. Call upon Councillor James Clinton.
Yeah. But the summary as follows is, this is a 10-year system-wide strategy. It starts with the vision, Dudley, a place where residents have sufficient resources to live a happy, healthy and content life. The strategy had 3 themes. Each theme had 5 objectives, actions to achieve those objectives and performance indicators to measure progress. Themes and objectives are enabled by community developments, assets-based approaches, enhancing workforce resilience and optimising communication with communities. And here's the breakdown. Theme 1 is around prevention of poverty. It is centred around health and social well-being of children, and its objectives are the first 1,001 days to improve school readiness, improve education and attainment, and reduce tooth decay. Oh, sorry, bad punctuation, and reduce teenage pregnancies. Theme 2, helping people out of poverty, has the following objectives: improve skills and employability, increase apprenticeship opportunities, reduce the number of not employed education or training, improve health at work, and develop effective public-private partnerships. This will be done via close alignment with the economic regeneration strategy and the development of a single delivery plan. In relation to health at work, we will encourage employers to register for the Workplace Wellbeing Charter and calibration with WorkWell Vanguard. Theme 3, mitigating the impact of poverty. This is the reactive approach to easing the impact of poverty, and the objectives are improve access to our welfare support, increase access to healthy, affordable food, reduce furniture poverty to achieve socially acceptable standards of living, reduce fuel poverty, increased awareness and prevention of financial loss. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, James. Any comments, questions? Sean? Oh, hang on. Yeah, Sean, fire away.
Yeah, just a quick one to the Cabinet member. Can you elaborate further on how you're going to deliver these aims? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, John. So this is a system-wide strategy. It is going to be based on partnerships. I'll give you just examples. The first 1,001 days, it is a priority of the Health and Care Board, the NHS board. So they will own that the reduction of teenage pregnancy is through our Sexual Health Services, we Public Health Commission. So we will be collaborating with the provider to do that. In terms of apprenticeship and employability, as I said, it would be in partnership with Helen's team in terms of implementing the economic regeneration strategy. We will be also collaborating with Helen's team in terms of reaching out to local businesses and banks and supermarkets. And just to say, it's a 10 years strategy. It might sound ambitious, but it is doable. And it is about utilizing resources better and redirecting resources. All what I said is utilizing existing resources rather than adding new money in the system.
To me, that's a really generic answer, and it doesn't answer the question I asked, which was, can you elaborate on, for example, unwanted pregnancies, etc. Can you elaborate on what kind of actions are going to be in this plan to try and drive that forward rather than just ambitions?
Okay, in terms of unwanted pregnancy, we will increase access to long-acting reversible contraception through our sexual health services. We will improve empowering teenagers to withstand peer pressure, and then we will support to employment for pregnant moms or teenage moms. So there are actions under each objective listed within the strategy. But the point I was planning, sorry if I didn't came across clearly, the actions will be owned by the system rather than by public health or the council alone.
Okay.
Thank you, Leader. I've got a couple of, well, I suppose one's a point more than anything and the other one's a question. So you talk, and I don't want to appear negative, I really don't, because I attended the DCVS Collaboration Day on the poverty strategy and I thought how well done it was. And it was a really exciting time to be able to contribute to that. But I just want to make the point that actually the first 1,001 days has been a priority of this council for children for at least the last 6 years. We now have more children than ever who are not school ready. So we really, you know, in terms of a system-wide approach, it's been a priority of the Health and Wellbeing Board since then. You know, we have to do something that's different to actually change the outcomes here. So that was just a comment on that. The question on page 46, number 8, is around the Household Support Fund. Is there going to be, and this is really to the Cabinet member, I guess, is there going to be any review of the administration of the continuation of the Household Support Fund? I think every time it's been rolled out, there has been a huge level of frustration from members of the public and from councillors because the system, the demand is so great, it crashes within minutes of it opening. It's committed within hours of it opening. How are we going to do that so that it's a fairer way and a less frustrating way and an easier way for residents of the borough to apply for it? Thank you.
You want me? Yeah, I can answer.
I think you're absolutely right. And in terms of, we've got a certain amount of money for that. And literally, we've pushed it out there. It's crashed several times. And so we can't find a better way of doing it. So I'm happy to get together with you to try and work out a different system in the way that we can. We've got a finite amount of money. We need to make sure that that's spread to the people that really need it. So I'm very happy to meet with you and we can work out a better way of delivering it.
We've already conducted a review on the ask of Councillor Foster, and we shared the result with Councillor Aston and Councillor Foster. I'm happy to share the result with you and Councillor Clark can meet to take you through it. There is lessons learned and how we can improve the system. And just to highlight, the part that administered through the web application is only 15% of the grant. We do have other avenue for distributing the grant. The other thing on the school readiness, it became one of the Health and Wellbeing Board priorities just in the new strategy started I think it started 6 months ago, and we've just finished a needs assessment on speech and language to inform the redesign of the autism services of the trust. And I'm happy to share with you the needs assessment as well. So we're working really hard, and we do acknowledge that our school readiness is one of the worst in the country, and this is why we are focusing on it. Yeah.
Thank you. I suppose for me, it's just that it's been a priority for quite a significant amount of time now, and we haven't actually made. I appreciate the pandemic was in the middle of it, and we all appreciate the impact of that. But it's been a significant priority for this council for a long time.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is my questions are really on the back of what Kathy's just raised there. So first of all, thank you very much, Councillor, for your offer of a briefing with Kathy. I think it would be helpful if that was offered to the shadow cabinet members, because actually this household fund it is a theme that does cross a number of portfolios. Myself and Adam, we had the briefing because it was on the back of the Public Health Scrutiny Committee, where we were quite keen to have some important information quite urgently. But I think it would be good to have a briefing with a number of them, and certainly Jackie, I'm sure you'll find that helpful, because it comes a lot into your portfolio as well in terms of what tenants can claim, etc. The second point, again, not dissimilar to what Kathy has asked, is some of the aspirations here, they're not new, and there has been some work done on them already. So how well has how effective has that work been, and what genuinely is new in here? And secondly, I think Mayada, you've partly answered my question by saying that you're joining up with other departments to talk about actions, but has there been a proper taking stock? We've got yet another strategy. Are you confident there isn't going to be duplication, or something isn't already going on somewhere else that you're planning to deliver? Are you satisfied that isn't the case?
Thank you. I hope so, because it's already been co-produced, for example, with Helen's team, and we've agreed who's going to lead on what with the Health and Care Partnership Board. Okay, and the genuinely new thing is and this is something I am excited about, is a private-public partnerships, because I think this is an untapped resources in terms of under their corporate social responsibility. In terms of availability of food for healthy food for children, in terms of their input in the prevention agenda, and apprenticeship, and helping us in employment.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Leader. Just bear with me, because it might sound like I'm on the wrong report at first, but I know where I'm going. I'm actually referring really to the appendix, which I know that we haven't got in front of us, but appendix at 3.1 refers to welfare support and advice. And I just want to raise a concern over the recent removal of agreement for Dudley Federation of Tenants and Residents to offer benefit advice within their SLA, which obviously sits with housing. This takes away from the cross-council holistic approach, which has been recommended within this report, and is counterproductive and detrimental to the target group. It's poor value for money is continuing to allow that work, possibly even with a small, sensible uplifting grant, could support ongoing benefit recovery work, and consequently assist in repayment or prevention of arrears in both rent and council tax. It may not be a HRA cost alone, but what about funding from elsewhere across the council? It doesn't really make sense just to sort of ignore that, really. Can I have a commitment that the council, as a sort of a wider entity, will have a look at that provision? Because the work that the Federation used to do, albeit as volunteers, they used to go out with people, they go to benefit appeals and all sorts, and got huge amounts of money back, which then allowed people to repay their debts and continue to pay. So whilst I accept the sort of comments that I've had in the past from Kathy around not being able to support it under the HRA, I do think it's something that the Cabinet and the Council needs to look at in terms of that wider provision, because so many of the other organisations now are struggling to provide that sort of as well. So, you know, I think it's something we need to look at.
Can we bring Kathy in on that, just to clarify that point?
Yeah, absolutely. So the service level agreement with DEFTRA was reviewed earlier on in this year, but it never included provision for benefits advice. This was something that the volunteers in DEFTRA have done out of the goodness of their hearts. Now, clearly, we can't fund them to do that, nor have we, and we need to ensure that with under spending controls that we're actually delivering what's in the SLA. So do appreciate that delivering what we've asked them to, and so aren't doing that benefits advice. We wouldn't build it in for all the reasons that Councillor Carroll has described. That's not what we're trying to achieve through that SLA, nor can we spend HRA funding on advice such as that. However, you know, what we are saying is we need to make the most of signposting where we can to those other organisations such as Citizens Advice, taking on board, of course, that they will be pushed in terms of resources as well. So we do, you know, certainly from a housing advice perspective, Councillor Carroll, all that signposting, but it is an issue around resource that's much wider than the council's resource around benefits advice.
Yeah, I do accept, obviously, that there's a resource issue, and I accept that it's not exclusively HRA, but what I would say is that given the amount of benefits that they used to get back through appeals and getting people benefits they were entitled to, the irony is they actually used to start paying rent or pay their arrears, and they were able to pay the council tax. So what I'm actually saying is, for a relatively small investment, if potentially we could find a little bit, we get the money back because they're then able to actually pay those arrears and keep paying. So to an extent, I think what's happened is a false economy. And I just think that somehow or other we need to fight, because some of these other organisations that we're talking about signposting them to, actually they're struggling, they're not able to do the work anymore. So actually what's happening is people just don't get that support. And I think it's something we need to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Mine's a simple question, and I take off my corporate parenting hat here, because you will know I've already challenged this. Apprenticeships. Are we going to be the leaders? Are the authority going to? We're going to show everybody else the way, because we've asked for this for our children in care for a long time, for care leavers. But what I'm saying now, are we as an authority going to lead the way for all our partners, and we're the ones that are coming up first to offer those apprenticeships?
Yeah, we'll take that on board. We'll have dedicated resources and effort on it. Yeah.
Thanks, Leader. Obviously, welcome the report and the outcomes that are the objectives that are included in the report. I suppose my question is regarding the measurable outcomes seem a bit woolly and not specifically measurable. So I obviously welcome that each objective has a how will we know if the goal has been achieved section, but they all seem a bit generalised. For example, infant mortality will decrease over time, fewer girls under 18 will become pregnant, fewer people will be neat in Dudley. The question is, are there any statistical targets attached to each outcome? Is a 1% reduction good? Is a 10% reduction good? Or do we just get to the end of 10 years, look at what's fallen and then tick every box? I suppose, are those statistical targets underpinning those objectives? Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Ashton. Absolutely. It's because it's still in the draft, so each objective will have a detailed action plan and an owner, one organisation who owns that objective. But absolutely, even we might not start with like a numerical target on year one, but we can develop that as we go on. Infant mortality is, these things takes time, so it takes 5 years to see absolute reduction in the graph. So we need to be realistic on setting those targets.
Okay, that's a good debate, some really good contributions, and particularly the one from Jackie. What I would advise is that if we have constituents who are unsure on what benefits to claim, and none more pertinent now with the winter fuel allowance, with the colder weather upon us, my advice would be to first point of call is contact your local elected members, be they ward councillors or members of parliament. And in my previous life, I was working for 2 MPs. A large percentage of my time was taken up looking at what benefits were available and what they could claim for, and indeed going with them to appeals in Wolverhampton. Some were successful, some weren't. But my advice would be go to your ward members or your local member of parliament as a first point of call. Right, the recommendations are there. I think we've had a good debate. Is that report accepted? Okay, thank you. Moving on then, colleagues, to agenda item 7 is environmental policy on pages 50 to 55. Call on Councillor Paul Bradley.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. The purpose of this report is to seek approval of the environmental policy for Dudley Council, which will inform future policy directions of the Council in relation to the environmental impacts of delivering council operations. It is recommended that Cabinet approve the environmental policy, that the Director for Environment be authorised to amend or make additions to the policy should it be required. Thank you.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Bradley. I mean, this is a really important item. I'm glad to see back again. It follows a presentation a few months ago at Environment Scrutiny Committee, actually, and there was a few things that I raised there, which I'm glad to see have actually been included in this, particularly with reference to the one previously where it said that the policy would be reviewed every 3 years. It's now every year, which was just the one concern that I raised at Scrutiny Committee. So I think that's a really good change, and it allows us to look at it, every 12 months. It's an important policy, and things will inevitably shift. I do maintain that it's been a long time coming. We declared a climate emergency in 2020. So given the importance of the issue, I do think it's taken far too long to get where we are now, but I'm glad to see that it's here and it is moving forward. The one thing that I would like to ask, and I think is an important point, and it links back to what Councillor Aston's just said on the last report, actually, around measurable outcomes. I'm presuming some of this will sit in the Climate Action Plan. But from my point of view, it would just be good to get an understanding, and you probably won't be able to do it now at this meeting, but some of the actions that sit behind the specific points and what we're actually going to do linked to them, when it says working with business or working with partners, things like that, what the actual points behind them, so we can have those measurable outcomes and make sure that this is having the impact that we need it to have. So thanks, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Casey. Absolutely agree, 100%. I mean, as you know, that it covers the air quality, the local environmental impacts, the natural and the built environment, water, energy, waste management. So importantly, the air quality for me, that's an important one. I will bring in Fiona, who's with us on screen, if she's got anything to add to that.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Yes, I think just to say that the Climate Action Plan will be the main vehicle for any actions in the environmental policy. But as Councillor Bradley's referred to, there are a number of cross-cutting policies and plans and strategies that will pick up specific individual actions. So the Air Quality Action Plan that's being developed at the moment, for example. But yes, where an action is relevant to the Climate Action Plan, it will sit in there. And production of this environmental policy was one of the first priority actions in the new Climate Action Plan. But it will be very much a corporate approach where my team, our climate policy manager, will work with colleagues in other relevant departments so that we build in the actions to the relevant plans. Hopefully that helps. Thank you.
So basically, it's all action, everyone to the pedal to metal and all action go.
Thanks. Yeah, and obviously we welcome it, as Councillor Casey said, it's been a long time coming, and it just brings us in line with other local authorities who also have these high-level action plans. Just to flag up to people, if they haven't had the opportunity to do so already, there is still a few days left on the consultation of the draft Air Quality Action Plan, and that will be really important in terms of the links to this policy. The other thing I'd comment on is actually it's really timely in terms of some of the other reports that we take in later on in the agenda when we're talking about planning and development, and actually this policy, I hope, will have a major impact on the way that development is carried out within this borough in terms of the environmental impact and the things that they will need to take into consideration. And also thank you to Councillor Bradley, because he's been able to involve me at every stage of the work on the development of this plan, which has been very much appreciated. Thank you.
No, I absolutely agree. It is all, we've got an action plan. We've got a targeted, it will be targeted climate policy. This is just really good news. And I'll actually turn it around, apart from my bad analogies, turn it around back to Kathy, as she actually gave it something simple. The climate change was taken out of the report, and through her work, we managed to put it back in there. So that's an important step. Just on its own, just the little things, every little helps, as it were. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Is that report accepted? Recommendations accepted? Okay, thank you. Moving on, colleagues, to agenda item 8 is the Dudley Local Plan Publication, Regulation 19 Consultation, pages 56 to 72. Again, I call on Councillor Paul Bradley.
Yes, sir, thank you. This report is to approve the latest iteration of the new local plan for Dudley that is now ready for public consultation. This version of the plan is known as the Publication Plan, or Regulation 19. The document tests the soundness of the plan and the final consultation document before submission to the Secretary of State for final examination. It is recommended that the Cabinet approves the publication plan for the next stage of the 6-week consultation as per recommendations in the report.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Just referencing page 61, paragraph 25, where it talks about older persons' accommodation being unviable and therefore retirement, sheltered and extra care is excluded from requiring affordable housing provision. It does say the council will encourage partnership working through funding and grant programmes to deliver affordable housing and older persons' housing schemes. But my question will be, with no specific requirements, will we be able to deliver the required affordable housing, particularly with an ageing population who are likely to need this sort of housing in future? Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, we should. All we're doing there is taking it out of the definition of affordable. So in the policy, people are supposed to provide a percentage on those sites. The viability showing if we do that, it will drive down the percentage that we can deliver. So rather than affect the overall quantum of affordable housing, we've taken that definition out. That doesn't mean we don't support that. That doesn't mean it won't come forward through other methods. More than likely, it'll come through those grant schemes and specific providers, rather than it being a requirement on a site that comes forward for policy. Thank you.
Page 62, number 28, where, the work that's been undertaken with colleagues in the climate change team. And obviously we've said that the previous policy will support much of the planning work that will be done by the council. I just want to make it, I suppose, state about the importance of working with the biodiversity net gain team on future developments and planning and the importance of that. And also to flag up that hopefully there will be some new recommendations going to CA board in October. I'm looking to the leader to approve those around new developments and brownfield sites and how biodiversity net gain can be implemented on those sites. So just to flag that up and to bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, like Kathy, obviously I welcome the revised 19 regulation update from Helen and the team. And I think obviously, clearly there have been some big changes in terms of the housing capacity, as mentioned in page 62 and 63, and also the moving of some sites from employment to housing. And my concern, obviously, is the employment land is further reduced at 2 other sites. And obviously, it's already been acknowledged we're not going to have enough employment land to grow Dudley's business space, and how I'm still struggling to understand how we do this sort of creative counting by working with other local authorities, as mentioned in page 64 and 65, in terms of, you know, we're going to count some of their outcomes in our outputs. So I'm concerned about that, because clearly, if we haven't got enough employment land, we could see Dudley businesses either moving, they can't grow. So there's a knock-on effect there. We could have a brain drain. And I'm struggling to understand how, you know, if Helen hopefully can clarify this, how that works. Because when you read the other document, Birmingham and other councils have got the same problems in terms of not enough land for employment and housing. So I'm really struggling to see how we're gonna solve this issue for our borough. Thank you.
You're absolutely right, Councillor Sahota. It is a big issue, not only in housing land, but employment land. And as we set out in the report, there is a shortfall, a reasonably large shortfall. We will have to talk to neighbouring authorities over the duty to cooperate, which was going to be, sorry, is that better? Obviously, through the changes that were proposed in the National Planning Policy Framework, the duty to cooperate was being potentially watered down to an alignment. I think that may now be strengthened again in the changes that are coming forward in the latest alterations to the NPPF. We'll have to work with neighbours. You're right, a lot of them have issues with their employment land provision as well. Some are better placed. So South Staffs, for example, is able to provide and does provide a regional strategic site, and they will be part of the allocation. But that's an allocation often shared at that economic geography area, Black Country or wider. So it's not necessarily just for Dudley. So we will have a piece of work to do to show that conversation and that cooperation exists. We will also have to continue to look for sites, but you can't create land where it doesn't exist. So it's a case of repurposing and ensuring what we have got is of the best quality. Thank you.
Just want to come back. So obviously, thanks, Helen, for that update. So for example, if South Staffs, so obviously which we border, have got land. So could that then mean then some of our business actually then move there because obviously we haven't got the capacity? So that's one point. The other question I just want to make also clearly is I welcome the restatement of the regeneration corridor for Help Zone after we raised some concerns. So that's positive. And the other thing that's missing in the revised regulation 19 is, yes, we've got, there is a need to protect our strategic centres, Dudley, Stourbridge and Brierley Hill, etc. I did make in the comments from this side of the group that we've got no policy for the 15 local centres that basically sit at that strategic level, at a ward level, because at the moment, what we do for those local centres is go and check how many empty shops there are. I think if we're going to, you can normally judge an area by its shopping centre. And I think we do need a policy where we look at those centres as well, because obviously otherwise I think we're missing the trick here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, through you, Leader. We can't ever prevent employment uses moving to other sites, but the intention of the South Staff site is a more strategic allocation, and therefore we should be attracting inward investment or companies that are expanding beyond the capacity of the sites they currently have. This will then open up that site for other businesses to come in. So overall, it should be a net improvement rather than a net loss. But obviously, if you can't provide employment sites, it is a risk that they will ultimately expand somewhere else. And then your second point about more local centres, then the policy, national policy and our local policy does create a hierarchy of local centres that naturally does protect them to a degree. I think what's important is so what happens now once we have that policy in terms of moving forward with regeneration programmes and activity in those centres. So the policy is not the end, it's just the start, Councillor, and we're very aware of the importance of all of our centres wherever they come in the hierarchy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. There is one important aspect here tonight as we move and pass this report and move to Reg 19. I took the big step to come out of the Black Country Plan a couple of years ago now. I was criticised by some, praised by others. Still believe it was the right decision as it saved our green belt. And within 18 months from now, we would have had bulldozers on green belt locations throughout our borough. We stopped that dead in its tracks. We now face a bigger threat than ever to our green belt and green spaces through the changes proposed that we've recently just completed the consultation on, and I believe sent off on Monday, Helen. Yep. So we've given a robust defence of what we think is right, of where we are. I believe that this plan is robust. It will stand up to public examination. I believe it should be allowed to pass through and ultimately be adopted by this authority and passed by the inspectorate and the relevant minister at that appropriate time. There is a threat that it won't be, and we have to realise in this room that if it doesn't pass and be allowed to pass, then there is a real risk that great parts of our green belt and green spaces will be at risk. Now, I don't think there is a politician in this room that wants that to happen, be they Lib Dem, Tory, Labour or Independent. None of us wants to see our green belt decimated. So we all have to make that call to the relevant members of Parliament, ministers, to allow this plan to pass unhindered. It is a good plan. Officers have worked extremely hard in very short timescales to almost meet that housing need. Take on board what Parmage says. We've never had sufficient land for employment, but then again, neither is any other authority, so we're all in the same boat. But if we do have to adopt the proposals in that consultation process, then there will not be a blade of green belt left untouched or green space. We cannot meet those new proposed figures. And there's no reports in the room. No, we're not playing to the gallery, but this is very serious. We cannot meet that need if we are forced to. It will mean every blade of green belt, every green space. And I'm looking at Judy, all the green spaces we took out in Brockmore Pensdale, once we took out in my ward, they will all be at risk. So my call to colleagues around the table, irrespective of political colours, is let's put some pressure on our members of Parliament, let's put pressure on the relevant ministers. If you haven't taken part in that consultation, please do. It's quite a lengthy process, and I don't know whether the deadline's passed, but you can still make representation. And whether it's through the members of Parliament, or through the LGA, let's make that representation. Every local authority is in the same book. We've all criticised the duty to cooperate in the past. And we've all played with the numbers to say, no, we can't help you. If we have to adopt the revised figures, there will be no duty to cooperate because none of us will have any spare land to do so. So I hope that members support the passing of this report and we go to Reg 19. And my plea is that we are allowed ultimately to go to public examination, as this is a robust and sound plan. Is that report agreed, colleagues? Okay, thank you. Okay, then we come to agenda item 9, which is Dudley's response to the Birmingham local plan consultation and also Sandwell's duty to cooperate correspondence. Paul.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This report is to provide an update on the recent Birmingham local plan consultation and Dudley's response to duty to cooperate correspondence from Sandwell Council. This is to ensure that the council fulfils its legal obligations under the duty to cooperate and that the interests of Dudley Borough are being fully considered in the plan making activities of other local authorities. It is recommended that Cabinet notes the summary of Birmingham local plan consultation and the responses to their preferred options consultation and endorses Dudley's response to Sandwell Council's duty to cooperate letter as set out in Appendix 2. Thank you.
Sorry, just a quick point, Chair. Obviously, Dudley both borders Birmingham City Council at certain parts of the boundary, but quite a bit it borders Sandwell Council's boundary quite a bit, and obviously South Staffs. Obviously, all these local authorities will have aspirations in their development plans or local plans to build houses or businesses on close to the border. And I think I just need some reassurance, obviously, as hopefully Helen's on the case. When these do come up, they will obviously have a negative impact on our side in terms of extra traffic. There could be, there could be a large housing development on Sandwell side. I can give you example, Helen, in Hellside North, where they're building on Brandall Golf Course. That's going to be a big lot of traffic down there. There could be a pressure on homes, schools. How will we then, obviously, how will we as a council ensure that we safeguard ourselves that, if there is, can we negotiate with them in terms of support for any road improvements or GP, there must be a thing that we can actually have our views listened to in terms of if it's going to have an impact on our wards, on the boundaries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, you might notice in the report, Councillor Hota, that Birmingham doesn't have any growth zones on our boundary, but they do have some smaller sites. And as with any authority where we have a shared boundary, if there are any significant developments in any proximity, they are supposed to consult us. That allows us the opportunity to comment back on the principle and also any implications of that, including infrastructure, because that does cross boundaries. So yes, absolutely, we would have that opportunity, and we will take every opportunity to respond where we think there's need to comment.
Oh, thank you, Chair.
A good example of that working is when South Staffs are going through their local plan, and there was a lot of objections in the Gornal ward to South Staffs developing on the Straits, which obviously neighbours right on the Dudley border, and a lot of objections were put in there. Members of Parliament, councillors, and South Staffs. Whether there was any intention to develop there, we don't know, but there was certainly no developments planned in their local plan. So it does work.
Okay, thank you.
Jackie?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a very quick query. On page 81, subparagraph 2, it refers to a shortfall in housing of 1,078 homes, but in the previous item, it's 695 homes. I just wondered why there was a discrepancy.
You want to answer it? No. I think, and Helen may correct me if I'm wrong, I think the one report predates the other in its preparation, and since then I think officers have found some more availability. Is that correct?
I'd have to go away and do a proper check, but I think that's the correct answer, that since we went to publication, the numbers have slightly changed. Thank you.
Just the plan proposes growth to deliver 10,000, just under 10,000, 10,500 net homes, 22.6 hectares of employment development land. That would be that's going to be a 699 shortfall, and that's the up to date version.
We have to realise that this local plan is constantly updating. We'll constantly have windfalls. Let's say, for example, the St James's building. That's not suitable for housing, but let's just say suddenly somebody comes along and says that it is. There's potentially another 150 apartments there, perhaps. So constantly these buildings are coming up, land's becoming available. So that figure should be live, and it should constantly go down until ultimately you reach your aims. From a technical point of view, it's probably good to be slightly under in your need, because then when you do have a duty to cooperate, you clearly can't, because you can't meet your own need, even if it's by a fraction. So hope that helps.
Yeah, I suppose I've just been a bit pedantic, really. I just wanted to check. Thank you.
All subjective, the government allowing us to carry on.
Is Councillor Bradley with a Dudley Blight-based strategy. Oh.
Thank you. Sorry about this, colleagues. This report is to present Cabinet with the proposed Dudley Place-based strategy, or PBS, for approval as the agreed final strategy. The purpose of the PBS is to identify Dudley's own priorities for use of the future single settlement resources, working alongside the new economic regeneration strategy. As that evidence-based, the PBS will set out what support Dudley requires through the single settlement. This agenda item is for approval as the agreed and final strategy as per recommendations in the report. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Leader. So page 90 on Pillar 5 retrofit and net zero, where it talks about the net zero neighbourhood pilot in Brockmore. I just wanted to make the point on that there were significant delays in this project starting and getting to the point it's at, not only because of problems with contractors, but also issues around the EPC rating on a number of council properties. That has required significant work, and I suppose the related point I'd like to make on that is how accurate are our EPC ratings on all of our council properties. So that's maybe one for the Cabinet Member for Housing to park. The other point I'd just like to make on it is, and I think it was acknowledged, I recently attended the Energy Capital conference at Wolverhampton, where there was a presentation given on this project, and it was noted to say that, and the Combined Authority they had driven the title net zero. It can't ever be net zero. It can be low carbon, it can't ever be net zero. So I think we just have to put it in the context that it's in, that the idea that the aim is to reduce the carbon footprint from it. It can't be net zero because of the urban environment that it's cited in. So that will obviously impact our aims for net zero by 2030. Chair, thank you.
Kathy, could you come in on that query by Councillor Baton, the EPCs?
Yeah, sort of. I only caught the latter half of it, but if you're asking about EPCs, in terms of our homes, there is the target to get to.
I think Kathy was asking about the accuracy of them.
It's the accuracy of the covered
apologies.
ratings.
Yeah. So what we do know now, following on from, sorry, my apologies, I missed the first half of it. It went a bit funny. But what we do know from the stock condition surveys now is that we have got accurate and up-to-date EPCs on all of the homes that we've been in, which is around 83%. And our internal teams are mopping up the final 17%. They're your classic no access cases that we're struggling to get into for all of our checks, not just stock condition surveys. So we've got some data now on our EPC ratings across our homes. I was just trying to dig it out actually as you were speaking, which is why I missed the first part of the conversation. So if I can come back to you on that, Councillor Baton, I can give you the current position as well. And we know that it is now accurate.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Leader. I keep reading this report and I just keep thinking to myself, I'm none the wiser at the end of it than I was at the beginning. To me, it's just generic waffle. And I was just wondering if there's any chance that I could sit with Councillor Bradley and Helen Martin, just so I can fully understand, you know, the more specifics of this. Because, you know, it seems to be good intentions, but that's where it ends. And I'd like to understand more of it. Thank you.
Absolutely. There's no problem with that. I think what the
plenty of nods.
There's a lot of strategies coming here and there. It's something that Councillor Baton alluded to earlier. They're all interconnected in some way. This one will bring us. We have to have an evidence base. If we have an evidence base that's specifically bespoke to Dudley, then we can go for grant funding, specifically bespoke to grant funding from the single settlement when that's finally resolved. But it's yeah, we'll just get together. It's just easier to do that. Thank you, Councillor Keasley.
We are going to check that grant funding won't need to be handed back at some point though, because it's not profitable, aren't we? Yeah, sure.
Point taken.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a question. I mean, how does this strategy link up with the previous one, which we talked about the poverty strategy? Because place-based, we're talking about really localized, and it's important that there is a link in terms of public health and deprivation, inequality, poverty into this place-based strategy. The other, the question is, why are some elements just focused on, for example, adult skills? Whilst that is really important and we do need to skill up our adults, the issue is much earlier on in terms of young people, you know, those in school in terms of education, but those in college, you know, studying for A-levels or other qualifications, and some are not in employment. So I think it needs, because we're talking about place-based, it needs to go much deeper, in my view. And particularly we need to big up and somehow in terms of Dudley's offer around leisure, culture and heritage. You know, there was a report that last year we had over 9.3 million visitors to Dudley compared to 2022. Obviously, Dudley has a lot to offer, but where it fails is not all of it is packaged together. And that needs to play more focused. And again, place-based where there are things much more locally. I mean, just down the road here, you know, the Black Country Museum, the zoo, Brent's Nest, all of these, you know, the Canal Trust. So much more focus at that local place-based level as well. Thank you.
I think on the first point you raised, I think that was covered early on by Mayada disclosing the fact that on her report, there was a lot of liaison with Helen's department. So I think maybe for between them, they provide a briefing note for you. So that can be elaborated on. So that covers that point. yes, our visitor numbers have increased quite significantly, and that's worth about £440 million to the local Dudley economy. What we need to do, I say we as a council, as authority, is to make sure that those people don't just come for one day, that they come for a series of days. So they have one day at one attraction, one at another. I spent, I think it was Tuesday, or Monday, sorry. I spent Monday down at the Black Country Living Museum for a few hours, and we had a delegation of around 20 foreign journalists, all working for the tourism boards in their respective countries. So we had them from India, from Pakistan, we had them from China, from other countries in the Far East. A lot of the emphasis was on Peaky Blinders at the Black Country Museum, as you'd expect, but we're also linking into the other attractions. Now, hopefully they will go back and they will write a great experience of what they saw at the Black Country Living Museum and the zoo and other attractions, and that will feature in their respective tourism publication or trade magazines at some point in the future. But we have to do more of that to make sure that we're shouting from the rooftops what Dudley has to offer. And we do have a lot to offer. And if we can get the entertainment part of this right, the leisure part of it right, such as, and I'll mention the ice rink, which according to a report from the West Midlands Growth Company, they are looking to perhaps put planning permission in March. That shows real progress. If we look at the museum now outside with the scaffolding erected, you know, there's real progress there. I think Dudley has a lot to shout about and a lot to offer, but it is about getting that right offer on the table and importantly, getting people to stay just for more than one day.
Just one comment on that before my colleague comes in. I think, you know, it's really good you had that number of journalists coming and visiting the Black Country Museum, and what they'll end up and what we hope that they write up, and they'll write up about the Black Country Museum, needs to be much more joined up, integrated approach, because the zoo is only, you know, so many 100 feet up, you know, further up. So when we do have these opportunities, where it's missed is having that joined up, integrated approach. Yes, they need to write about the Black Country Museum, but also the zoo and everything else that has to offer. And that is what is missing, not just for Dudley here, but across the borough.
With all due respect, I think you're missing the point. If it was just about the Black Country Living Museum and the zoo, pointless me being there. There are better people who can talk about the museum and the zoo than me with far more experience and knowledge. I was there to represent the whole authority and to showcase what else the authority has to show. So there is that joined up approach. If there wasn't, they wouldn't have invited me. Parmajit?
I think this is just to sort of add to, I think this has been raised before, Chair, obviously the need to sort of, you know, tourism. I don't know whether we still got Nicola Beckley, who's a tourism officer for Dudley. She does a sterling job. I think it's how we link that the rest of the attractions. And I know this was mentioned in the LGA review, and I know that obviously that was one of the things that they recommended, and hopefully I think it's been picked up by the Regen strategy going forward. But there is that potential there to, you know, thread all these things together. So we have got a better offer to make rather than sort of it being sort of all done in isolation. So I think that's positive going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Just a general comment, if I may, Leader, and that's to say that obviously these are a suite of different strategies and policies. The umbrella one being the economic regen strategy that you approved in March, and then underneath that is the cultural strategy you approved a couple of cabinets ago, and then this place-based strategy. What it is a document into which we can hook bids for funding. This document relates to the combined authority and the single settlement. So they created the pillars in answer to your question, Councillor Ali, about adult skills and education, because that's money that flows through them. That doesn't mean we can't put forward wider and other projects. That doesn't mean we can't bid for other funds, but this is in relation to devolved funds through the combined authority. But you're right, we need to look at it across the piece. And therefore there will be a number of different projects trying to achieve a number of different outcomes set out in the economic regen strategy, and which we will bid for different funds as it and when it comes forward. And I suppose the only other point I would point out, if I may, Leader, is the fact in paragraphs 15 onwards that we're doing work now to align the pipeline of projects that we have to the themes and the priorities in the economic region strategy, to the pillars in this place-based strategy, to get a priority of actions to go forward that we will get to be ready to bid as and when we move forward, that meet the outcomes that we need for the residents of our borough. Thank you.
Just very quickly, are we at the point yet where we know or we have any certainty over the amount of money coming through from the single settlement? And also, it alludes to projects on page 90, number 16, LUF projects, the levelling up funding. Do we know what's happening with that fund? Is it going to be rolled into something else, or where's it going?
Short answer, no. But this is commonplace across the CA. Leaders and chief execs, directors like Helen are writing to the relevant ministry, and there is a wall of silence. And I think, you know, not making a political point, but I think what the government's doing is trying to just head everybody off, hold them at bay until the autumn statement or the budget in late October. From a practical point of view, if you're the government, that's probably the sensible thing to do. From our point of view, we want to know, is the money there? Can we get on and spend it? You know, there are different phases in the levelling up process, as you will know, where we need to know whether we can move to that next phase. So it's incredibly frustrating, but all 7 of us, I think, are in the same boat. I don't know if Helen wants to add. But it's extremely frustrating time, but it's just the way it is at the moment.
Thank you, Leader. Not much more to add other than we try to remain in contact with our local government office colleagues, but they're not really able to respond at this point in time. In effect, those 3 funding streams of the 2 levelling up funds and the longer term plan for town are in effect on pause pending any statements. Thank you.
Okay, and is that report agreed? Okay, thank you, colleagues. And then finally, as regards reports, number 11, the Stourbridge Business Improvement District. Again, Councillor Bradley.
Yes, thank you, Leader. The purpose of this report is to advise colleagues of the proposed Stourbridge Improvement District Business Plan, or BID, to endorse and recognise its role and contribution towards achieving the Council Plan 24 to 25 and the Dudley Economic Regeneration Strategy. Recommendations are to delegate authority to the Director of Regeneration and Enterprise to complete the ballot papers in favour of the BID as identified in Appendix 1.
Okay, any comments or questions? Okay, I'll take David Stanley first.
It's just to say, Leader, I hope this will be as satisfactory as what is taking place in Halesowen, where they've done a wonderful job down there over the last few years. It's been a transformation in every shape, and hopefully this will take place in Stourbridge and migrate itself to Dudley eventually, because if you look around the town centre, we do need to be organising ourselves a little bit different to what we are currently, and these are the ideal tools to do the job with.
So, I mean, like Councillor Stanley, I welcome this report and the progress that's been made. I mean, for Stourbridge, I mean, it's been a long time coming, really, hasn't it? I mean, Halesowen was the first. I remember that being discussions about that being started when I was back in the day when I was cabinet member for economic regeneration, and at the time I thought Stourbridge might have been the more obvious town to be taking this on. But, you know, probably nearly a decade later, here we are, and that's all very positive. But what has been the breakthrough point, and can we learn from that for introducing this in other towns like Brierley Hill and Dudley, where actually there are funding streams coming in, and maybe when we have funding streams coming through, there's an opportunity to do some development work with the businesses, and Pump Prime may be a bid model, and village centres and town sub-centres and local centres like Sedgley and other places as well.
Okay, well, I wasn't there at the beginning of this, but one example I can give is Brierley Hill, the way that they work together with all the councillors and the local businesses. If this is successful, if the ballot's successful, I think that it'll be a fantastic project. As to the beginnings and the origins of doing it, Helen?
my recollection, and apologies, I wasn't in the detail when this happened either, but the first time round, Stourbridge was considered for a bid and it nearly got over the line. But it was the percentage of big businesses versus small businesses. And I think Tesco had a national policy of not voting on the levy, and it was enough to tip it into not deliverable. Now, either they've changed their policy or the rules around that have slightly changed, but we're obviously in a different position now than we were then. Thank you.
I want to echo some of the positive feedback, saying, you know, it's welcome, and I think it's a good start for Stourbridge, and hopefully have a positive impact in terms of further improvements. I think I may be correct that Kat's played quite a bit of work there, working with the businesses, so, and other members. So well done. Hopefully it's positive going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, just to make a plea to Councillor Bradley and Helen Martin, that a bid is a business improvement district. It is not a substitute for the council. You know, the bid should be the icing and the cherry on Stourbridge, as it is in Halesowen by the looks of it, and it shouldn't replace. The council shouldn't be going, well, let the bid do that. So you fully support it, but just can we make sure that it enhances the area, it doesn't replace council services? Thank you.
No, I totally agree. It is a supplementary project.
That report agreed, colleagues? Okay, thank you. Then we got number 12, to report on any issues arising from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and Select Committees. Helen? No, okay. And number 13, to consider any questions from members to the leader where 2 clear days notice will be given to the monitoring officer. None. Okay, thank you, colleagues. I now close the meeting and we've got a short break before the full council meeting, which shouldn't take very long.